The silence did not break. It stretched, pulling every eye in the lobby tighter toward her, as if the entire room was waiting for permission to breathe again. Aisha Carter finally moved, not away, not back, but forward by a single, measured step, closing the distance just enough to shift the balance of the space. Her voice, when it came, was calm, even, almost quiet, yet it carried farther than Gregory expected. "Is that your final decision?" she asked, not challenging, not emotional, just precise. Gregory exhaled sharply through his nose, clearly irritated that she had not reacted the way he anticipated. He straightened his cuffs, glancing briefly toward the small gathering of onlookers, as if drawing confidence from their attention. "You heard me," he said, louder now, performing authority instead of holding it. "This is private property. Guests only. I will not repeat myself." Behind him, one of the front desk agents shifted uncomfortably, her eyes flicking between Aisha and the computer screen in front of her. Emily Ross, 26, new to the job, barely 6 weeks in, leaned slightly closer to her terminal as if something there did not match what she was seeing in front of her. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, hesitant, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. Across the lobby, a man in a gray suit lowered his newspaper just enough to watch more closely. A woman near the concierge desk whispered to her partner, her tone sharp with disbelief. "She has not done anything," she murmured. The atmosphere was no longer neutral. It was shifting. Aisha noticed all of it. The glances, the hesitation, the cracks. She had built entire companies by reading rooms faster than this. Gregory took another step forward, now standing less than 3 feet from her, his presence intended to intimidate, but it felt rehearsed, hollow. "Security is on their way," he added, as if that would settle it, as if that would end the moment. Aisha's gaze did not waver. Not from his eyes, not from his certainty. Instead, she let a small pause settle between them, long enough for doubt to begin creeping into places Gregory could not see yet. Then she spoke again, softer this time, but sharper. "Interesting," she said. Just one word. It landed heavier than anything else in the room. Gregory frowned, thrown off by the lack of resistance, by the absence of fear. "What is that supposed to mean?" he snapped. Aisha did not answer him directly. Instead, her eyes shifted briefly past him, landing on the front desk. On Emily. Their eyes met for half a second. It was enough. Emily swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper at first, but it carried because everything else had gone quiet. I think I have seen her name before," she said, uncertain but unable to stay silent anymore. The words hung in the air like a spark near dry wood. Gregory turned sharply. "Excuse me," he said, his tone cutting now, directed at his own staff. Emily hesitated, her fingers now resting on the keyboard as she glanced at the screen again. "There is a reservation. Under Carter," she said, a little stronger this time, though her voice still trembled under pressure. The room shifted again, subtle but undeniable. Aisha said nothing. She did not confirm it. She did not deny it. She simply stood there, letting the truth begin to surface on its own, the way it always did when people were given just enough space to reveal who they really were. Gregory's expression hardened, but something underneath it flickered, just for a second, just long enough to betray that Emily's words had landed. He turned fully toward her now, his voice dropping into a warning. "Then you check it properly," he said, each word tight, controlled. "Because I do not see a guest standing in front of me. I see a problem." The word lingered, heavier than it should have been. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone near the entrance whispered, "That is not right," under their breath. Emily swallowed again, her fingers finally pressing against the keyboard as she pulled up the reservation system, her eyes scanning quickly, then slowing, then stopping. Her posture changed first, shoulders tightening, chin lifting slightly. "It is here," she said, this time clearer, more certain. "Aisha Carter. Penthouse suite. 3 nights. Fully prepaid." The words hit the room like a sudden drop in temperature. Gregory did not respond immediately. He stared at the screen from a distance, as if refusing to accept what he could not control. "That does not mean anything," he said finally, brushing it off too quickly, too sharply. "Names can be used. Accounts can be compromised." His voice was louder now, not stronger, just louder, trying to reclaim ground that was already slipping. Aisha watched him without interrupting, her expression unchanged, but her silence now carried something else. Not patience, not curiosity, finality. Across the lobby, a man stepped a little closer, lowering his phone just enough to speak to the person next to him. "He is doubling down," he said quietly. "That is a mistake." Near the concierge desk, the woman who had been whispering earlier shook her head slowly. "He should stop," she murmured. But Gregory did not stop. He could not. "Security will still escort you out," he continued, turning back to Aisha as if the confirmation had never happened. "Reservation or not, we reserve the right to deny service." The phrase sounded official, rehearsed, safe. But it rang hollow now. Emily looked up from the screen again, her voice gaining a fragile edge of courage. "There is also a VIP flag," she added. "Executive-level clearance." That changed everything. Not loudly, not visibly, but deeply. A subtle shift moved through the room, like a current no one could ignore anymore. Gregory's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to the screen again, this time longer, this time searching. For a second, he said nothing. Then he exhaled, forcing a short laugh that did not reach his eyes. "Systems make mistakes," he said. "It happens." But now it sounded different. Not confident. Defensive. Aisha finally moved again, not stepping back, not stepping away, but reaching slowly into her pocket. The motion was deliberate, unhurried, controlled. Every eye followed it. She pulled out her phone, holding it lightly in her hand, as if it weighed nothing at all. Gregory noticed. Of course he did. His voice sharpened immediately. "Recording will not help you," he said quickly, almost reflexively. Aisha's gaze lifted to meet his again. "I am not recording," she replied, calm, steady. Then she unlocked the screen. One tap. Simple. Precise. The kind of movement that did not ask for attention but commanded it anyway. "I am documenting," she added quietly. The difference settled into the room like a warning no one could ignore anymore. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of approaching footsteps echoed toward the lobby entrance. Security was arriving. And for the first time since this began, Gregory did not look entirely sure of what would happen next. The sound of polished shoes against marble grew louder, measured, official, approaching from the far end of the lobby as two security officers stepped into view, their presence immediate, their posture firm but uncertain as they took in the scene before them. The room shifted again, not with noise, but with expectation. Gregory straightened, relief flashing across his face for just a moment as he gestured toward Aisha without looking at her. "There," he said, voice regaining its edge, "escort her out." The officers hesitated. Not long, but long enough. One of them, a tall man with a name badge that read Daniel Brooks, scanned the room instead of acting, his eyes catching the phones, the tension, the way no one was moving away. "Sir," Daniel said carefully, "what seems to be the issue?" Gregory exhaled sharply, impatience returning. "She is refusing to leave private property," he said. "She has been asked multiple times." Aisha remained still, her phone now lowered at her side, her expression unchanged, but her presence somehow larger, more anchored, as if the room itself had begun to adjust around her. "I have not refused anything," she said calmly. "I have asked a question." Her voice did not rise, but it carried. Daniel glanced at her, then back at Gregory, then toward the front desk where Emily still stood, her hands resting lightly on the counter, her eyes no longer uncertain. "Her reservation is valid," Emily said, louder now, her voice no longer shaking. "And it is flagged at the highest level." That landed differently this time. Not like a suggestion, like a fact. The second officer, a woman with sharp, observant eyes, shifted her stance slightly, no longer stepping forward, no longer reaching. The momentum had changed, and she felt it. Gregory noticed too. His tone sharpened again, more forceful now, but less convincing. "That does not change the situation," he insisted. "We have standards. We have policies." The word policies echoed, but it did not hold the same weight it had earlier. Across the lobby, a man stepped forward just enough to be heard. "Policies do not look like this," he said quietly, but clearly. A few heads nodded. Someone near the entrance murmured agreement. The room was no longer passive. It was watching, judging. Aisha took one slow step forward, closing the space between herself and the center of the room, not toward Gregory, but into the moment itself. "Standards are important," she said, her tone even, almost reflective. They reveal more about the people enforcing them than the people they are used against. The words settled into the air with precision, each one landing exactly where it needed to. Gregory opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out immediately. For the first time, he looked around, really looked, and what he saw was not support. It was doubt. The officers did not move. The staff behind the desk did not speak. The guests did not look away. And Aisha, standing in the center of it all, did not raise her voice, did not step back, did not explain herself further. She simply stood there, letting the truth continue to surface, layer by layer. As the room slowly began to understand that whatever this situation was, it was no longer under Gregory's control. The tension did not explode. It thickened, settling into the air like something heavy enough to press on every chest in the room. And for a brief second, no one spoke, no one moved, not even Gregory, who now stood at the center of a situation that no longer responded to his voice. Aisha's gaze remained steady, but something behind it shifted, not outwardly, not visibly, but internally, like a door closing on something she had already decided long ago. For a fraction of a moment, her eyes softened, not toward Gregory, but past him, as if she was looking through time itself. She was 16 again, standing in a hotel lobby in Charlotte, wearing her best dress, waiting for her parents, when a clerk told her she needed to leave because this space was not for her. She remembered the way people had looked at her then, the same way they were looking now, curious, judgmental, distant. Then another memory surfaced, sharper, closer. 23 years old, standing at a front desk in Chicago, being asked 3 times for identification while others walked past without question. The same pause, the same doubt, the same quiet humiliation dressed up as procedure. Back in the present, Aisha blinked once, and the softness disappeared, replaced by something far more precise. Final. Gregory cleared his throat, attempting to regain control, but his voice lacked the authority it once carried. "This is going nowhere," he said, louder than necessary, trying to push the moment forward. "We are done here." But the room did not follow him. It stayed with her. Aisha shifted her weight slightly, her hand lifting just enough to glance at the screen of her phone again, not nervously, not urgently, but as if confirming that something had already been set in motion. "You are right," she said calmly. "This is going somewhere." The words landed with quiet certainty. Daniel, the security officer, looked between them again, his posture no longer rigid, but attentive, cautious, as if he understood that whatever decision came next would matter beyond this moment. Emily stepped out from behind the desk now, no longer hiding behind the counter, her voice steady as she spoke again. "There is also an ownership flag attached to the reservation," she said, her eyes fixed on the screen as if she could not believe what she was reading. "It is not just executive level. It is listed under primary authority." That phrase changed the air completely. Gregory froze. Not visibly dramatic, not exaggerated, just a slight pause, a hesitation that did not belong to the man who had been so certain minutes ago. "That does not mean what you think it means," he said quickly, but the words came too fast, too defensive. Aisha finally lifted her eyes fully to meet his again, and this time, there was no softness, no distance, no patience left. Only clarity. "It means exactly what it says," she replied, her voice still calm, still controlled, but now carrying something undeniable. Around them, the room had fully shifted. No one whispered anymore. No one looked away. The officers did not step forward. The staff did not speak. The guests did not move. They were all watching the same realization unfold in real time, piece by piece, as the truth began to surface, not because Aisha forced it, but because Gregory had pushed it too far to be hidden any longer. Gregory's confidence did not collapse all at once. It cracked, slowly, visibly, like something under pressure that could no longer hold its shape. His eyes moved again, not toward Aisha this time, but toward the front desk, toward the screen Emily was still staring at, toward the quiet confirmation he had not been prepared to face. "Primary authority," he repeated under his breath, as if saying it out loud might somehow reduce its meaning. But it did the opposite. It made it real. Aisha did not rush the moment. She did not interrupt him. She let it settle, let it expand, Let every person in the lobby feel the shift that had already happened. Then, calmly, she lifted her phone again. One smooth motion. One deliberate action. "Carla," she said, her voice steady, controlled, carrying just enough to reach beyond Gregory without ever raising itself. "Initiate full access verification for Horizon Grand." There was no hesitation on the other end. The response came instantly, clear, professional, undeniable. "Verification in progress." The voice replied through the speaker, sharp enough for those nearby to hear. A faint ripple moved through the front desk terminals. Screens refreshed. Systems reloaded. The quiet hum of technology replacing the earlier silence. Gregory turned toward the sound, his expression tightening as the environment he controlled began responding to something else, something outside of him. "What are you doing?" he asked, but the question lacked authority now. It sounded like someone asking for answers, not giving orders. Aisha's eyes remained on him, unblinking. "I am finishing what you started," she replied. Simple, direct, final. Behind the desk, Emily stepped back slightly as her screen updated again, new fields appearing, new access layers revealing themselves. Her eyes widened, not dramatically, but enough to show that what she was seeing went beyond a standard reservation. "All departments are syncing," she said quietly, almost to herself, but the words carried. The security officers exchanged a glance. Daniel shifted his stance again, no longer positioned between Aisha and the exit, but slightly to the side, as if instinctively removing himself from a situation that was no longer his to control. Around the lobby, guests leaned in without realizing it, drawn into the moment as it unfolded not through noise, not through confrontation, but through something far more powerful. "Proof." Gregory tried again, forcing his voice back into shape. "This does not change protocol," he insisted, though the words came slower now, less certain. "We still enforce standards." Aisha tilted her head slightly, studying him the same way she had earlier, but this time there was no curiosity left in her gaze. Only conclusion. "You are right," she said. "Standards are being enforced." The sentence landed with precision, each word aligning with the shift happening in real time around them. At that exact moment, a soft chime echoed from the front desk system. Not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakable. Emily looked down at the screen again, then up, her voice steady now, grounded in something she could no longer deny. "System confirms full ownership authority," she said clearly. "Access level, unrestricted." The words did not echo, but they did not need to. They settled into the room like a final piece clicking into place. Gregory did not respond immediately. He stood there, silent for the first time since this began, as the structure he had relied on, the authority he had assumed, and the judgment he had acted on all began to unravel at once. Not through force, not through argument, but through a truth he could no longer ignore. No one spoke. Not immediately. The words from the system still lingered in the air, heavier than anything that had been said before. Unrestricted access. Full ownership authority. It did not sound dramatic. It sounded official. Final. Aisha Carter did not move right away. She let the silence do what it needed to do. Let it settle. Let it sink in. Let every person in the room process what had just been confirmed without her needing to explain it. Gregory stood frozen, his posture still upright, but no longer anchored. His eyes flicked once more toward the front desk, as if hoping the screen would change, as if the words would rewrite themselves into something safer, something smaller. But they did not. They stayed exactly as they were. Aisha finally took a slow step forward, not aggressive, not rushed, just enough to bring herself fully into the center of the moment. Her voice, when it came, was calm, measured, and impossibly clear. "You asked me to leave a place you believed I did not belong," she said. No anger, no raised tone, just truth. Gregory opened his mouth, but nothing came out. She continued, her eyes never leaving his. "You questioned my presence, my identity, and my right to stand here," she added, each word landing with precision, not as an attack, but as a record. Around them, the room did not move. Phones were still raised. Eyes were still locked. Even the security officers remained silent, their roles now irrelevant in the face of what was unfolding. Aisha paused, just long enough to let the weight of those statements settle fully. Then she delivered the line that shifted everything. "What you failed to realize," she said quietly, is that you were not evaluating a guest. A slight pause. One breath. The entire room leaned into it without realizing. You were evaluating the owner. The sentence did not echo, but it did not need to. It landed like a final verdict. A visible reaction moved through the lobby, subtle but undeniable. A man near the entrance lowered his phone completely. The woman by the concierge desk covered her mouth slightly, her eyes widening. Emily stood still behind the counter, her hands now resting flat against the surface, as if grounding herself in the reality of what she had just witnessed. Gregory took a step back without realizing it. Just one, but it was enough. Enough to show that the ground beneath him had shifted. Enough to show that control had left him completely. "That is not possible," he said, but the words lacked conviction. They sounded smaller than the silence that followed them. Aisha did not react to the denial. She did not argue. She did not repeat herself. Instead, she lifted her phone once more. "Carla," she said, her voice steady, unwavering. "Please confirm my position for the team." There was no delay. Aisha Carter is the majority stakeholder and executive owner of Horizon Grand and its parent group. The voice replied clearly. All operational authority reports directly to her. The confirmation sealed it. Not emotionally. Structurally. Irreversibly. Gregory's shoulders dropped, just slightly, but enough for everyone to see. The certainty he had carried minutes ago was gone. In its place stood something unfamiliar. Realization. And Aisha, still composed, still calm, stood exactly where she had been from the beginning. Not louder, not higher, but undeniably in control of everything that had just unfolded. The shift was no longer subtle. It was complete. You could see it in the way Gregory's shoulders lowered, in the way his stance lost its sharpness, in the way his eyes no longer held the same certainty they had just minutes ago. The room had already decided. Not loudly, not dramatically, but undeniably. Aisha did not raise her voice. She did not step closer. She did not need to. The authority had already moved to her side. "Carla," she said again, her tone unchanged, steady as ever. "Begin internal review of this location." Immediate. The response came without delay. Review initiated. Accessing personnel records, incident logs, and compliance history, Carla replied, her voice crisp, efficient, clinical. The front desk terminals flickered once more. Not chaotic, not broken, just controlled, like a system correcting itself. Emily's screen updated again, new tabs opening, red markers appearing beside employee profiles. Her eyes moved quickly, scanning, processing. "There are multiple complaints flagged," she said quietly, almost in disbelief. "Unresolved. Marked as closed without escalation." A murmur rippled through the guests. Not loud, but enough. Enough to confirm what many were already thinking. This was not a single moment. This was a pattern. Gregory heard it. Of course he did. His jaw tightened, but there was no response ready this time. No policy to hide behind. No script to follow. Aisha finally took another step, positioning herself just slightly to the side, not blocking him, not confronting him, but making it clear the space no longer belonged to his authority. "Standards matter," she said again, softer now, but somehow heavier. "But so does how they are applied." The words did not accuse. They exposed. Daniel, the security officer, shifted again, this time fully stepping back, removing himself from Gregory's side entirely. The second officer followed without needing to be told. Their role was no longer enforcement. It was observation. Gregory noticed. That was the moment it truly settled in. He was alone. Not physically, but structurally, professionally, completely. "This is being taken out of context," he said finally, but the words sounded distant, disconnected from the reality unfolding around him. Aisha did not respond to that. Instead, she looked toward the front desk. "Emily," she said calmly. The young woman straightened instantly. "Yes," she answered. "Please log this interaction under executive review," Aisha continued. "Timestamp everything from initial contact." Emily nodded, already typing, her movements no longer hesitant. The system responded in real time, each keystroke locking the moment into something permanent. Gregory's eyes flicked toward the screen, then back to Aisha, then around the room, as if searching for support that no longer existed. The guests were not on his side. The staff was no longer silent. Even the systems had turned. Aisha lifted her gaze back to him, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. You said I did not belong here, she stated. Now the system will determine whether you do. No threat, no emotion, just outcome. At that exact moment, a soft tone echoed again from the front desk. Emily paused, then looked up, her voice steady. Access credentials for Gregory Vance are under review, she said. Another beat. Then, quieter, more final. Temporary. Restrictions applied. The words did not need emphasis. The effect was immediate. Gregory did not move. He could not. Because for the first time since this began, he was no longer the one deciding what happened next. The room did not erupt. It did not need to. The silence that followed was deeper than any applause, heavier than any reaction. It was the kind of silence that only comes when everyone understands exactly what just happened. Gregory stood still, his hands at his sides, his posture no longer commanding, no longer certain. The system had already spoken, and for the first time, he had nothing left to say. Aisha Carter looked at him for a moment longer, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with something far more controlled. Resolution. She did not step closer. She did not raise her voice. She simply let the moment finish itself. Around them, the guests began to shift, not away, but forward, their presence no longer passive. A man near the entrance gave a slow nod. The woman by the concierge desk lowered her phone, her expression no longer tense, but settled, as if something had been corrected in real time. Behind the desk, Emily stood straighter now, her hands steady on the keyboard, her eyes no longer searching for answers, because the answers were already there. Aisha turned slightly, her gaze moving across the lobby, acknowledging the space not as someone claiming it, but as someone who had always owned it. Carla, she said calmly, her voice carrying just enough to reach the system that had already aligned itself with her authority. Finalize the review and proceed with executive action. The response came instantly. Confirmed. Employment status for Gregory Vance is now terminated. Access revoked permanently. All credentials disabled, Carla replied, her tone precise, final, irreversible. The front desk system chimed once more. Emily looked at the screen, then up, her voice clear. Access has been removed, she confirmed. Gregory did not react immediately. The words seemed to reach him in pieces, as if his mind was trying to hold on to something that was already gone. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, his shoulders dropped. Not dramatically, not outwardly, just enough to show that the weight he had carried minutes ago had shifted completely. Aisha did not linger on him. She did not repeat what had been done. She did not explain it. Instead, she took a single step forward, reclaiming the center of the room not through force, but through presence. This space was never the issue, she said, her tone steady, measured, and calm. It was the assumption behind it. The words settled into the room with quiet authority. No one interrupted. No one questioned. Because there was nothing left to argue. The system had confirmed it. The moment had proven it. The outcome had sealed it. Aisha glanced once more toward Emily. Continue your work, she said. And do not hesitate to question anything that does not feel right. Emily nodded immediately, her voice firm. Yes, she replied. Aisha then turned toward the lobby entrance. Her steps unhurried, controlled, each one carrying the same quiet confidence she had walked in with. No escort, no announcement, no need. As she moved, the space seemed to open naturally, guests stepping aside not out of obligation, but respect. And just before she reached the doors, she paused for half a second, not turning back, but speaking clearly enough for those behind her to hear. I did not raise my voice, she said. A brief pause, then the final line. I raised the standard. And with that, she continued forward, leaving behind a lobby that would never operate the same way again.